let's talk about Ruffles. So, Ruffles on doll clothes is adorable, obviously. I like the look of them. You can make them cute and childish, but you can also add them to more elegant adult outfits as well. They're just fun and visually interesting. Variety. Variety is good. I struggled for a long time to find a way to make ruffles that looked good in the 1/3 scale and was easy for me to do consistently well. That was a big thing, especially when I first opened my Etsy, that it's not just a matter of if I could do something once. I had to find a way to repeat it over and over again with consistent, high quality results. So I began my mission to find a good way to ruffle. Specifically in this case, create ruffles with elastic, because elastic is really great for doll clothes, makes it easy to get on and off, and that's always kind of a big issue. So, on to the different techniques. One technique I've seen quite often is to zigzag over the elastic while the elastic is stretched out. I find the limitations of how many ruffles you can get this way a little bit frustrating. It also really depends just on how stretchy your elastic was to begin with. And for me, it was really easy to accidentally over or understretch the elastic while I sewed, making the finished product look pretty uneven. So I had trouble with consistency.
So here's some thoughts. This one is just stretch the elastic while you sew and zigzag. And I always find this a little difficult to do because you can see up here, if I don't get started quite right, the tension just doesn't seem right. And you are limited by just how many ruffles you can get. This was the elastic stretched as far as it could stretch, and they look nice, but sometimes I want more ruffle.
Another technique I've seen involves gathering your fabric first and then zigzagging it to the stretched piece of elastic. So, like you pre-gather it with gathering stitches and then you stretch your elastic over it and zigzag over it. I like that you get more ruffles for your buck here, but oh my goodness, you guys, I am so bad at this method. I don't know if it's lack of practice or what, but I inevitably need to redo it at least 3 times and it gets very frustrating. So I kept looking.
You can see it way more because this is contrasting thread, but I'm not like a huge fan of that gathering thread in there. It is something I could probably spend the time to fish out, but frankly, time is money. That sounds tedious and not especially fun. You're also limited in, you don't like, I don't know, I just don't like that, like that happens. So keeping your gathers even. This is another thing that happens to me all the time, where while I'm sewing, one of the gathers will get pinned down in kind of an ugly way. And that's why I have to do this one over and over again to get it right.
So then I came across a technique called thread casing. I have no idea where I found this. I'm pretty sure I didn't come up with it myself, but I just don't know where it came from. This technique is pretty much what I had hoped for when I started looking. It does take a little bit of practice at first, but not that much before you get the hang of it, and it's pretty quick and consistent. To start off with, you need thin, flat elastic, like the 1/8 inch, or I've seen it sold as 3mm as well. You also need to know how long your finished elastic should be before you start. The goal is as tight as it can be while still being able to get on and off the doll. So for waistbands, it's kind of important to check because dolls tend to have pretty skinny waists, and nothing is worse than making something that you can't get over their hips when you're done. I do want to add a quick caveat though. If you're making something for a person, please make sure you don't go as tight as possible. People are squishy and they need blood flow, so find a length that's comfortable and not just stylish. The dolls are less picky. Once you've found the perfect length, add about 1/2 inch to account for what will remain unstretched in your seam allowance. Mark your final length onto the elastic with something that doesn't bleed a lot. but do not cut your elastic yet. This is important and you'll see why in a bit. Now to actually sew. First, I tack the end down firmly. Go over it more than once because it's really impossible to dig this out if it snaps into your casing later. Then, with my needle up, I turn the piece 90 degrees and I switch my machine over to a wide zigzag stitch. Super wide, because the goal is now to sew over the unstretched elastic without actually piercing it with the needle. Just sew right on past that mark you made and keep going, being very careful not to hit the elastic with your needle. At the end, you can backstitch a little, then pull it out of the machine. This is the fun bit. Pull your elastic out until you see your mark appear and then tack it into place. It's a little nerve-wracking because if you've accidentally sewn through your elastic, you'll find out now if you have to redo everything. But if everything went according to plan, you'll now have beautiful stretchy ruffle, and as a bonus, you can rearrange the ruffles. For instance, with a tube top like this, if you want more ruffles in the front and maybe flatter sides, it's just a matter of tugging your extra fabric into place.
This is the thread casing, and you can see exactly how it works. And the thing I love about this too is you can push a bunch of your gathers up if you want a spot more gathered, but you don't have to. You can stretch everything out, make them nice and even. So I feel like this is really forgiving and definitely one of my favorites.
As a bonus ruffle technique, if you've gotten pretty good at the zigzag version, I found that you can get a really awesome effect using a straight stitch and a super wide double needle as well. The sewing process is basically the same with one exception. You do need to keep the elastic on the back side of the fabric and sew entirely by feel. Anytime you can't see what you're doing, it can get pretty tricky, so this might take some practice. The end result is really gorgeous though, a beautiful, super flat and low bulk casing for your elastic. It looks absolutely awesome from the front. I really recommend trying it out if you're up for a challenge. I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of it, but it was such a fun eureka moment when I figured this out on my own.
My absolute favorite is the twin needle version, which creates this really gorgeous casing that I absolutely love. The back is just, you can see the thread, but again, my thread is really contrasting. If you match your thread, this isn't such an issue. Occasionally you will get, and I think this is because my needle is older and also designed for stretch fabric, and this is actually not stretch fabric, so I think that's why that's happening. But even if that does happen once or twice, you can't really see it from the right side. So definitely my absolute favorite. Kind of a pain because you got to install your double needles and thread them and all that jazz, so I bust this one out for special occasions. Now for the different fabrics. So we have, this is kind of our baseline fabric, which is a nice, soft, very basic muslin cotton fabric, and I think it makes pretty nice ruffles. This is a jersey knit, which, you know, makes pretty okay ruffles. This is a beautiful cotton lawn, which I feel makes excellent ruffles. It's nice and thin, has a good drape to it. This is another knit fabric, but this one's a little bit softer than just the straight up like t-shirt style jersey. This has a nicer drape, I feel, and you can see it in the ruffles that it makes. I really like that one. And now we get into the ones that aren't so great. The stiffer your fabric is, the more you see that in your ruffles. This is what I feel is kind of like crunchy ruffles. They don't feel very nice to touch, and they don't look especially good. It works, but it's not my favorite. And then we get into the really, like, this is that 4-way stretch I used for the swimsuit fabric, And if I don't condense the ruffles too much, it sits pretty okay and it works alright. But when you start getting really condensed ruffles, because the fabric itself is thicker, it wants to kind of twist around, which can be a little bit unmanageable in a strip like this. It can be workable in like an actual garment, but not great. Then we have this guy. I considered remaking this with a wider piece of fabric because I cannot get this to sit nicely. Like, it won't do it. This is a super thick double knit fabric that is really quite thick, and it hates ruffles. It doesn't, like, even if you can get the ruffles to kind of lay flat, they don't look great. I just don't like them very much. So super thick fabrics, not the best, especially for doll clothes. And this is another example of a really beautiful fabric that is just too thick and not great for this style of ruffle. I have actually gathered this and just sewn the gathers and made them not elasticy, and that actually worked pretty okay. But once you add the elastic to the mix, it's just, the thickness is not having it. So I'm not a big fan of that look either. But I did like this one when I did it on this apron. Here, I'll pop the picture up for you. So it's kind of, a lot of experimenting goes into what fabrics are going to work in what situations, but I have had really consistent, great luck with stuff that drapes pretty, you know? You can feel the softness of it, and it just flops instead of sticks out a little bit, if that makes any sense.
I really hope you found this video useful and that it helps you for your ruffled adventures. You should definitely tag me at underorange on Instagram so I can see anything you make with it. I really love seeing everyone's projects. And if you want a super cute basic pattern to try all the ruffles on and also to help support me at the same time, please do check out my ruffled pajama pattern on Etsy. I'll leave a link down below. And I also want to send a special shout out to my husband, who actually came up with the idea of the ruffled tube top after I excitedly told him about this technique all the way back in June. I am so lucky to have such a supportive partner. He's always thinking up good project ideas, even though he's really not that into dolls himself. Anyway, sorry, I can gush about him all day long. Thank you so much for joining me. I've got another video I'm excited about that takes you through my entire drafting process, start to finish. It is turning into a bit of a beast to edit, so that's why this shorter video is coming out first. But definitely subscribe and hit the bell notification to hear about that one when it goes up. I think it's going to be really fun. Until then, have a good one. Bye.